Micah, hi.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us. You got to come right after Patty LaPone and Randy Rainbow.
Yeah, that's hard to follow up. Yeah.
It is hard to follow. We won't expect any singing or anything like that, but I appreciate you being here. Okay, let's get into it. Bernie Sanders is a political hero of the American left, and for good reasons. But if we're going to get the work done to create a political reality where socialism is possible in the United States, we need to shift our focus onto the movement he sparked. Bigger Than Bernie is a new book out right now that shows us how. And here with us today is one of the book's authors, Micah Uetricht. Micah is the deputy director of Jacobin magazine and hosts its podcast, The Vast Majority. He is the author of Strike for America, Chicago Teachers Against Austerity. Welcome to the program, Micah. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Well, where do we start? Your book is Bigger Than Bernie, but let's talk about Bernie's contributions. How did Bernie set the stage for the upcoming socialist revival in the United States?
Bernie's campaign really catalyzed a newly reborn left in the United States. I have been a socialist of some kind for a good chunk of my life, and I always believed that that was a sort of interesting fact about myself, but one that I would never really be able to trumpet from the mountaintops, because I believed what we're told about this country, that the United States is a sort of uniquely center-right country, that people will never go for that scary socialism stuff. That whether it's something in our soul or whatever, that Americans just won't go for it. And Bernie's campaign showed us that that's not true, that when socialist politics are packaged the right way, people actually can become very excited. Literally millions of people can become very excited. And somebody like Bernie Sanders can do two pretty credible runs for the presidency of the United States. But not just that, an entire movement that is not just about winning the White House, but is running candidates for city council in a city like Chicago, where I live, or a movement that is involved in labor organizing and organizing for a Green New Deal, and all of these things, that can come out of a campaign like his and can do so under the banner of socialism. So that's the argument that we make in the book, that he showed us that that's possible, and then we sketch out sort of how that has been done over the last 4 years since his first campaign, and then where it goes from here.
Isn't it highly unfortunate that the word socialism itself has been bastardized and used in such a way to demonized, etc., but some of the platforms that Bernie and others of his ilk would like to see happen are things that have already happened under the New Deal and then have become eroded under capitalism as we know it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, things that were part of the New Deal, things that countries that are far less wealthy than our own do. I mean, it's unfortunate is an understatement. I mean, it's the whole, McCarthyism in the 20th century. I mean, all of this was not some kind of a collective, American losing its collective mind. It was a project that was designed to smash our ability to win things like, Medicare for all, or a robust, affordable housing that's subsidized by the government, or a college way of going to college where we don't all take on, $30,000, $40,000, $100,000 worth of debt. I mean, that's what the toxic, the making toxic the word socialism has been about, is to make sure that we don't have those kind of things that countries all throughout the world have. And so, some people wonder if maybe we can do we can win a better world without doing so under the banner of socialism. And of course, I think that people who don't consider themselves socialists, but are fighting for important things that would make life better are, they're comrades of mine. But I also think that it is really important to claim that term socialism specifically, because it's the socialist ideal that really points the way towards a cohesive view of a better world, and Bernie's campaign really helped us along in that respect significantly.
Can you outline a little bit more about that cohesive view? I know a lot of people watching already know what it is, but there are people who are watching this who don't know what it is. You named a number of different policy platforms that we could have: the college, affordable college, or debt-free college. Wow, what an idea! That educated people would be good for the whole nation. It's blows my mind. But what is sort of the underlying ideology of socialism that capitalism just doesn't address?
Right. Well, socialism is fundamentally about expanding democracy, and it's about expanding democracy into all realms. It's about expanding democracy where we have it. So socialists don't say, that we don't believe in democratic rights like being able to vote or freedom of speech. We say, yes, we have those things. Those are very good. We need to defend those things. And we also need to expand democracy into the realms where we don't currently have it. And we do not have economic democracy in this country. We don't have, for example, when you go into a workplace, you essentially enter into a dictatorship where you as the worker have very few rights on the job, and your boss is a kind of petty dictator. And then on the society-wide level, we don't have much say about very basic economic things like as we mentioned, being able to go to university and not take on incredible amounts of debt, being able to get the healthcare that you need without going into debt or spending large amounts of money. I mean, all of these things are they're not just things that enrich a small number of people at the expense of the many. Our for-profit health system is also fundamentally undemocratic, that we can't get the things that we need in order to lead a decent life from our society. And so that's the democratic socialist argument, is that we can't have democracy unless we also have those things. And so we want, as we've already mentioned, Medicare for all. We want people to be able to use to get healthcare free at the point of use. We want to tax the rich in order to fund that. We want affordable housing for everyone, an expansion of socialized housing. We have a number. The Bernie Sanders platform really spelled out what a lot of those things were. Socialists want to go beyond those things. We want to not just have a few, not just sort of tame the power, the really rapacious power of the marketplace in just a few places, but we really want to create a society that's oriented around people's actual needs rather than the enrichment of a small handful of capitalists. And we think that democratizing our not just our political system, but also our economy is a way to do that.
The mindset shift that would be required in order to go from what we have now to, what is being proposed, what we're talking about here it seems enormous, that we'd have to overcome like a Darwinian ideology. How do we do that?
Right. I mean, I was mentioning before that we learned from the Bernie campaign that America is not uniquely allergic to socialism, but clearly there is a lot of work that needs to be done to make socialism acceptable. And I think that's what's happening right now. I mean, through the Bernie campaign, there was that kind of detoxification of the term that we had never seen, to the extent that we've never seen before. And we have people who are running for office like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, like Rashida Tlaib, like the half a dozen socialists who are on the Chicago City Council, where I live. So that is underway right now. We're already seeing that shift in people. And you also see it, by the way, in the way that Donald Trump is now constantly trying to attack socialism, to attack Marxism. I saw a photo yesterday from, I believe, Donald Trump Jr. out on the campaign trail with a giant bus that says something like "Fight Socialism." I mean, this is a reflection of the fact that socialists are actually successfully making our ideas palatable in society, that the fact that the right feels the need to attack us. So I think that's going to continue as you see more and more elected officials on the local level, on the state level, in Congress, who identify with this term socialism. And as we continue to have a society-wide conversation about what this term actually means and what when people see what it is that real live socialists are actually fighting for. So despite the fact that we are in a very bleak situation on multiple levels in this country and in this world, for reasons I probably don't need to get into for you or your viewers, I actually feel fundamentally very hopeful that we're moving in the direction of that kind of that change in American political consciousness, in which socialism becomes seen as a really central and important and not scary part of the political discourse.
You write that capitalists have a real advantage in that we currently rely on their investments. What does that look like? Is there any way to break free of this stranglehold?
Right. This is a key piece of life under capitalism, that capitalists don't just take lots of money from everyone else and get to hoard it themselves. They're also responsible for the things that we need in order to get by every day. Those of us who don't own the means of production in the Marxist terminology, you need to go find some rich guy to give you a job so that you can get money to pay your bills. And that gives the capitalist class, the 1%, if you will, the people who own the means of production, a kind of outsized power in society, because if they don't like something that happens in society, they can vote with their dollars, and the rest of us will pay the price for that. So there are ways to change that. I mean, I think that just the building up of working class power through unions, it's a sort of old school example here, but it's the best thing that we have in order for working class people to actually gain some level of power and some level of democratic say in society. In sort of advanced situations where we've built more power in the electoral level, it's possible for legislators to curtail the power of capital through things like capital controls, where you say, okay, you can't just pull your investments out of a country and leave a bunch of workers high and dry if you decide that you don't like a law that gets passed. So there, capitalists have a real outsized amount of influence in our society. We have one who's occupying the White House right now, but there are real ways to curtail their power, and I think we need to think very seriously about doing that. If we don't do that, we're going to continue to live in a world in which the tiny handful of people continue to get richer and richer, and climate change gets worse, and everything that we already see being bad gets a lot worse. So we need to think very seriously about how to do that.
We're speaking with Micah Uetricht. He is the author of the new book, Bigger Than Bernie: How We Go from the Sanders Campaign to Democratic Socialism. So how do we go from the Sanders campaign to democratic socialism? Is voting for Biden, an important step in this process? There's been a lot of talk in the media. Your thoughts about that? There's been a lot of talk, both in our chat rooms and in the media, about how voting for Biden is just another nothing, et cetera. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I work for a magazine that published a biography of Biden called Yesterday's Man: The Case Against Joe Biden. We're not big fans of Joe Biden. If you want to see what we think about Joe Biden, you can go all through our website and see us detailing his very sordid record. But I also think that the Trump presidency is a unique threat to, I mean, not to just socialists, of course, but to just
everything.
Everything. I mean, he's fundamentally attacking. I mean, not just in the typical Republican ways of sort of big handouts to capitalists and to tax cuts for the rich. I mean, he's doing all of that stuff, of course. But there's a real threat to this. Are some of the really basic fundamentals of democracy. Now, I don't think that Joe Biden is a particularly strong candidate for really shoring up or protecting much of democracy. His political career would suggest otherwise. But I also think that a Trump second term would be a uniquely dangerous prospect. I don't think too hard about my own personal vote. People really wring their hands a lot about it, and I think that reflects the fact that voting in America is seen as the kind of primary way of engaging in politics. We don't have a lot of other small d democratic outlets in our society because we have a really eroded democracy in this country. So I think people shouldn't think too hard about who they cast a ballot for. What matters more, I mean, I think that unless they're thinking of casting a ballot for Trump, I think maybe they might.
Then they want to think a little
hard
that.
about that. Yeah. But I'm not thinking. It's kind of a no-brainer for me about what I would not like to see Donald Trump be in the White House for the next 4 years. But I also think that we need to think about politics as being about a lot more than your vote. It needs to be about getting involved in the political process. I mean, I'm a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, for example. We write at length about the Democratic Socialists of America in the book. That kind of activist organizing group in the long term that does work both in elections and in the streets is going to be the way that we get out of this mess. It's not going to be casting a vote for Joe Biden or not.
We often interview Professor Richard Wolff on this show, and many times his response is that the United States needs, general strikes and things like the Yellow Vest movement has done in France. What are your thoughts about in the streets political protest in terms of the viability of bringing about some of these changes that we're looking at or hoping for?
That's absolutely central. I think that we should be thinking very hard about that street level protest as we get closer to the November election, in which there are many scenarios in which Donald Trump could very undemocratically steal the election. And I think that if the 2000, for example, is any indicator, it's not just sort of polite, like following of the rules, by the book type organizing or politics that will prevent a theft of the election. It will require street level action, and that's true of winning anything that is worthwhile in American politics. I mean, we have a picture up here of the 5 to 15 movement. I mean, we would not have made the progress that we have made on winning a $15 minimum wage throughout this country if it wasn't for that street level action that has taken place throughout the country. And that's true of everything that is decent, every progressive policy measure that's ever been won in American history. It's come through action in the streets. And that is a fundamental piece of democracy, is that kind of action. That's what we're going to need in order to win the kind of better world. It's not just going to come through even electing people who are socialists to office. I mean, and by the way, that's one of the amazing things about the Bernie Sanders 2020 campaign, was that he said, not me, us. He said that it wasn't just going to require electing him to office. It would require a much bigger movement that had multiple facets. And clearly that kind of street level protest and street level organizing, or organizing your workplace through a union, all of that is really essential to win that better world.
And yet Donald Trump still has been successful at convincing working class folks that the conservative platform is the way to go. What will it take to convince working class conservatives that the socialist economy will work better for them than the capitalist system we have now?
Well, I think that the extent to which he has the working class vote in America is sometimes overstated. I think that he's far more. And his base is far more sort of upper middle class, car dealership owners than it is like UAW factory members or in Detroit auto plants or whatever. But I do think that obviously the Republican Party has made significant inroads into the working class vote in America, and the polls show that, and clearly that's his pitch, right? He's like, I am the working class. I think he at one point said that he wanted to make the Republican Party into a working class party, which is for a socialist like me, it's just like, what is going on here? But it's because his pitch has become a kind of culture war pitch, right? Like it's not about we're going to deliver a substantively better wages and better benefits, and we're going to get you Medicare for all, and we're going to, you're not going to have to go into huge amounts of debt to send your kids to college. It is that, these snooty metropolitan elitist liberals are looking down on you. And so I think that key to fighting that has to be, you can't win that culture war on its own terms. I mean, we have to steer the conversation away from the culture war and make clear to people that what Donald Trump is selling you is a bill of goods. It's not, and of course, this is where the rubber hits the road of the problem with the actually existing Democratic Party, because the actually existing Democratic Party, including Joe Biden as one of the key figures, has moved further and further away from making that kind of robust working class pitch to people.
Thank you. I was so annoyed while I was watching the debate with, Kamala Harris and that other white guy, the vice president, Pence, because I felt that her hands were tied because she was unable to make a more populist, socialist populist argument. If she had just been like, listen, we need universal basic income, or, actually fracking is bad. Like, okay, we can do it for now, but we need to stop it as soon as possible because people need water to drink and air to breathe. And by the way, we're moving toward a green economy. Right. Maybe that's not her policies, but I do think that she did say that she doesn't want to do fracking anymore in the past. So why must we tie the hands of even, people who are more progressive than, say, Joe Biden. I just felt like she could have punched back harder if she was like, listen, this is all crap. What we need is free medical insurance. That's what we're saying, or I think that would have won the day.
Yeah, well, this is the story of it sounds so simple, right? And it kind of is simple. It's not really that complicated. But the problem that we write about at length in the book is that, of course, we have this unique political situation in the United States in which we're stuck with this party, the Democrats, that are not really a left-wing party. They're not really a working class party. And that this sets us apart from basically every other wealthy country in the world. We have this party, the Democrats, where people who are getting screwed by Blue Cross Blue Shield are in the same party as the executives of Blue Cross Blue Shield, right? People who are getting screwed by Wall Street are also in a party where it gets enormous amounts of donations from Wall Street. People who want the Green New Deal are stuck with people who are still getting, stuck with someone who will not just robustly say no more fracking. We're not going to do that anymore. Who will not embrace the Green New Deal. All of these things are really central problems for us. And, Kamala Harris and as well as Joe Biden are there. If you look at their entire political careers, they're people who have very much been in the pocket of all of those very wealthy interests that make it so that they can't make that robust pitch for Medicare for all, for a Green New Deal. So this is a central problem that we need to really reckon with, the fact that we're stuck with this party that refuses to really embrace that robust, sustainable, and working class agenda. And that's a project for not even just the long term. I mean, the medium term, even the short term.
We are speaking with Micah Uetricht, one of the authors of the book, Bigger Than Bernie, How We Go from the Sanders Campaign to Democratic Socialism. If you're watching on Twitch, please put if you have a question you'd like me to forward on to our guests, just put it in the stream chat. I am watching your comments, and we do have a couple minutes left for your questions. So if you have them, label it question. And if you're watching on YouTube and you'd like to have your questions given over to our guests in the future, don't just subscribe to our channel and then watch us live on Twitch, because that's where we look for our, some of the questions that we can get. That's where you can get your questions over to our guests. You write in the book that we are in a rare, perhaps brief window of political opportunity. How can we seize? What is that? Can you describe the window that we're in, and how can we seize this moment to make socialism possible in the United States?
Yeah, what I would say about the moment is not that we're uniquely, we've sort of won a unique amount of people over to policies like Medicare for All. Long-standing polls have shown the majorities of Americans have supported policies like Medicare for All. They've supported wanting to tax the rich. There's all across the board, but people in America have supported a progressive agenda. And we've also seen at times in the U.S. in very recent history before Bernie Sanders, there's never been any shortage of protest movements in America, right? I mean, like the Iraq War, you saw enormous amounts of protests. The 2011 Wisconsin Capitol occupation, then the Occupy movement later that year. All of these things have happened. The Black Lives Matter movement, of course, when it kicked off not long after that. All these things have happened and have shown a real distaste for the status quo and a desire for something different. But it wasn't until Bernie came along that really showed that those kind of inchoate feelings that people had could actually take form in an organized, incredible political program that could actually run for office and be quite successful. So I think that has shown, that's what the window that is opened, that this showing to people that yes, you can say openly in American politics, even if you're on the highest stage, running for president, that medical companies should not determine whether or not you get the medical care that you need, that you shouldn't have to go into enormous debt in order to go to college, that we should have a future that is not a complete dystopian, scorched earth hellscape under climate change, that we can actually have a sustainable one. So that opening is there. And, who knows how long it'll be open? Who knows if we'll swing back in a right-wing direction? I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but certainly the opening is there. And so I think we should seize it. And the ways that we discuss in the book seizing it include continuing to run campaigns for elected officials who are very much not just fighting for things like Medicare for All and for a Green New Deal, but also willing to go toe-to-toe with the establishment of the Democratic Party And then also, there's a real need to, as we were discussing earlier, build grassroots movements, build the labor movement, make a kind of a democratic and fighting militant labor movement. I live in Chicago, where the Chicago Teachers Union has gone on strike numerous times over the past decade, and that's really changed the whole politics of the city. I think we need many more cities where that kind of thing is happening, where people need to be, engaged in organizing at work. The campaign for the Green New Deal is obviously of central importance. So we need to recognize that this new reality in which we have this left-wing opening in politics is pretty special. It's something that hasn't really happened in at least half a century in this country, and we need to seize it, because if we don't, there could be really dire consequences for us, for the planet, for human flourishing. So this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
We have a question from Zomo 242 coming in. Actually, one comment, one question. First, this person writes, right now, we are in need of 1, UBI, 2, free medical insurance for anyone who lost a job due to COVID corporate layoffs, termination, and 3, prescription coverage for everyone who has no way to pay, and 4, less focus on the $15 minimum wage until we have restored the millions of jobs that have been lost. Your thoughts about, in this very moment with what we're facing, COVID, environmental catastrophe, what would be the first things to focus on if we had to focus somewhere?
Well, yeah, your commenter pretty much nails all of them. I mean, clearly what we need right now, just the most dire thing that we need at this moment, is a UBI. I mean, I have some concerns about UBI in normal times, but clearly in the middle of a pandemic, that is absolutely what you need. And other countries are doing versions.
Canada has something like this.
I mean,
they're getting $2,000 a month in Canada.
Yeah,
that's everybody.
And there's no reason that we, the wealthiest country in the world, could not do something similar ourselves. So that's clearly very desperately needed. And by the way, this is something that Trump could have had a very easy layup with this, because the pandemic is awful, right? Everyone recognizes the pandemic is awful, but it's largely beyond people's hand. The fact that it popped up in the first place is not any one country or politician's fault. So if Trump had done the obvious and just sort of take care of people through things like UBI, it could have been a very easy political layup for him. But of course, he's incapable.
He gave the one UBI. Right. The one, relief check, as if that was going to fix everything.
Yeah, the most meager in the wealthy world. So clearly, we need a lot more of that. I mean, there's real suffering right now in this country. I don't need to tell your viewers that. I mean, eviction crisis. I mean, unemployment continues to be enormous, even as we've seen a kind of a rebound. And by the way, a lot of people are going to work who probably really shouldn't be going to work. They're really risking life and limb for them and their family in order to take home some pretty meager wages. So that's the most immediate thing that we need. And then there's never been a time that has a stronger argument for Medicare for all when you're in the middle of this pandemic, and you absolutely need to not be thinking about whether or not you can afford to get treatment for contracting COVID. I mean, if our medical system at this point is actually a barrier to public health. So we need at the bare minimum some movement towards a Medicare for all type system that can deal with all of the unique medical problems that people are now wrestling with in the middle of this pandemic. And we need to do that yesterday. I mean, that is so central to where we should be right now in the middle of this pandemic, but we're not there. So those are the two things that are clearly most pressing. I think that if Biden wins the election,
I was just going to ask you this. What do you think will change on, if we're all still alive and Biden becomes the president in January?
Well, I think that there will have to be some movement towards that kind of, but on both of those ends, that Biden understands that if he wins the election, that at a bare minimum, that's what he'll need to do. I mean, conservatives in other countries are doing measures like a UBI, so that'll happen at minimum. But of course, we know that through Biden's own political history that he really has to be dragged kicking and screaming on those kinds of questions. And his instinct has always been to move rightward in the face of criticism. And we know, given the kind of rabid reactionary nature of the Republican Party and the Republican base at this point, that if he wins and he goes to institute those measures, we're going to hear, people are going to be really up in arms, maybe unfortunately quite literally, over these things. So
that is exactly why we need a strong in the streets progressive movement, because if he is movable based on public opinion, unfortunately he usually moves to the right. There isn't the kind of progressive outcry that we are seeing right now is beyond what I've seen in my lifetime. I think it's much stronger than it has been. I'm hoping that perhaps that the fact that he does need to at least slightly be beholden to some of the interests on the left, that will allow us to maybe push him. I mean, Trump is not pushable at all. So right. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Biden is largely a weather vane. He just sort of turns.
So let's control the weather.
Exactly.
You got to blow the wind. That's what we're doing here. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. I really appreciate it. The new book. One of the final questions was, what can we do to for people stuck at home? I want to get this right. This is also from Zomo. People stuck at home. What can we do to spread the socialist message and sway others in their social media family and friends? Lists, links, sites, actions, your thoughts. I would suggest getting the book. It's a good first place.
Sure, always a good first step.
Well, yes. The magazine and exactly. The podcast are also really great places to go for that.
Yeah, and if you read the book, you'll see that we make a very strong pitch for people to get involved with the Democratic Socialists of America in particular. I mean, DSA has exploded since 2016 all over the country, not just in big cities, but really in tiny towns. And I mean, in all 50 states, literally, there are DSA chapters that are involved in everything from mutual aid projects to help people who are suffering under COVID, running really inspiring candidates everywhere from New York City to states like Virginia. We got our fingers in all kinds of pots in terms of what the exciting left-wing activism of this present moment is. So I would make a pitch. I mean,
being stuck at home is actually quite good. It's a good time to jump in.
Right. And there are, it's not fun being stuck at home, and politics looks a lot different when you're stuck at home, but there are real ways that people are engaged in campaigning for various things through the Democratic Socialists of America. So I would encourage people to go to dsausa.org/join, check out what the DSA is about. And then, of course, yes, as you mentioned, Jacobin daily, we've got all kinds of content on things that your viewers would be interested in. So jacobinmag.com is the website.
And you can follow Micah Uetricht, who we've been speaking with, at Micah Uetricht, Michah. Oh, I almost misled everyone. Uetricht.
It's a tough first and last name, I understand.
Just look at the book and then look, it's there on the cover. You can do it yourself. You can follow him on Twitter. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And thanks for writing that book. It's a good one.
Thanks for having me.
So necessary. You're watching act.tv. I'm Julianna Forlano. If you're watching on YouTube, we do ask that you please subscribe to our channel and, share it with other people, because we are building our audience here. One of the ways to get the word out here about socialism is to share the content of act.tv. That would do it. Thanks everyone for watching. I'm Julianna Forlano, as I said. And tomorrow on the program, I believe it's John Nichols coming on the show tomorrow. Yes, John Nichols from The Nation. We're going to talk to him about his latest work and his thoughts about, exactly what's going on here. And later in the week, we have investigative journalist who has become basically the fourth most knowledgeable human being about voter fraud and voter suppression in the United States. Greg Palast is coming on the program, so we look forward to that. Join us, keep joining us, keep sharing. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we out.